That's good. Good to see. All right. Well, why don't we get started? I think it's about 11 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. Good to see so many people join us. I'm Frank Sullen. I'm the Managing Director of Vital Plus, if you haven't met me. And today we're hosting another Future Beauty webinar on Zoom, our new reality. It's an exciting adventure to look for speakers, to inspire us and to share their knowledge and stories, to hear about their successes and their struggles, and to try to understand what path they took. Does it resemble something you did? Does it align with your own vision and goals? Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our speaker, Pia Kynock. If you're not familiar with Pia's accomplishment, let me give you a brief rundown. I'll just ask everybody to mute their computers if you can. So to give you a rundown of Pia's accomplishments, first of all, and this is important, Pia is the owner of a successful skin and wellness clinic. So it's good to know for us that we're listening to someone who's in the same boat. By that, I mean that her knowledge doesn't just come from reading books. Pia is a holistic skin therapist, a corneotherapist, and an accredited naturopath. Among her accomplishments, she also holds qualifications in yoga, in Reiki, in Qigong, NLP, meditation and mindfulness, and business leadership. So that's quite an accomplishment. And although that in itself, represents a tremendous journey already, Pia also loves empowering her fellow therapists by sharing her knowledge in the hope to inspire and empower you. To me, that makes her a star. And so we're very, very fortunate to have her here. She says about herself that her life is 1,000 journeys. I like that. Her journey started at her mum's clinic, and then later she took over the management, growing the business, facing those challenges and struggles that all businesses go through. And with her passion, Pia was able to reinvent the clinic and just take it to another level. She's now accumulated over 24 years experience in the industry. Maybe for many of you that's not a long career yet, but it's what you do within those 24 years. Pia's life and career is an example of how when you keep learning, educating yourself, and with determination, you undoubtedly succeed. So today, Pia is going to talk to us about emotions, the gut, and the skin. What's the connection? Well, I think there's a lot, but hi Pia, it's great to have you with us. Did I get that right? Is there something?
That was so beautiful. I feel very honoured, and I feel honoured by the presence of all of you watching on live, and also who are going to be watching the recording later. It truly is my favourite thing to do, is to share education and share my knowledge. This is actually a huge topic, and so I just want to warn you, I might go a little bit over time. I do have a lot to share. And yeah, I mean, I am going to do my best to open up windows of perspective for you. That's my job. I also want to let you know that I do have some issues with my internet bandwidth, so I'm going to shut down my video and just show you my presentation and the slides while I'm talking.
Great idea.
With my connection, and then that way we all get to participate. And I will come back on at the end to answer any questions that might have come up. It's really important to me that you ask questions and that you have feedback, whether that's good or bad or indifferent. Like, your level of engagement changes how expansive this conversation can be. And no question is a silly question. Like, get all in there. Like, if you're not thinking it, someone else is asking, if you're going to ask it, someone else will also be thinking it. So yeah, If no one has any questions to start, I'm going to just share my screen and stop my video.
Fantastic.
Okay, amazing. Thanks, guys. Beautiful. So I'm just going to jump into presentation mode with my slides here. Amazing. So
yeah, we gotcha.
What is this connection between emotions, the gut and the skin? Obviously, I'm pretty sure that we all know our whole body health affects our gut and our skin. And as I just said, I don't have enough time to completely deep dive into all the aspects of what that means. I really do want to open up these windows of perspective, because that's what's empowering, because you'll be able to find your own resonant points about things that you want to know more about, because it is a great topic. It is a huge topic, and there is a lot to explore. And we all know it, because if you've ever gone with your gut to make a decision, or if you've ever felt butterflies in your stomach when you're nervous, you're definitely getting signals from a somewhat unexpected source. This is your second brain. Hidden in the walls of your digestive system, the discovery many years ago of a brain in your gut actually revolutionized medicine's understanding of the links between digestion, mood, health, the way that we think. And scientists call this little brain the enteric nervous system, or ENS. And it's actually not so little. It's like two thin layers that have actually contain more than, and sometimes less than, but about 400 million nerve cells that line the entire GIT, or gastrointestinal tract. And it is known as the second brain because it can operate independently of our brain and spinal cord. So what that means is it's making its own decisions without having to be told what to do from our central nervous system. And our two brains talk to each other, not just a little bit, but all the time. And so I really do believe it's so important that people have at least a conceptual awareness of what's happening. And if something is happening, it is important to address not just the gut when identifying the cause of gut upset, but also to look at the role of stress and emotions and what else is happening within that whole person. And so let's talk about whole and holistic treatment just for a moment. You know, I'm a holistic educator. I love it. So do you know where the word holistic comes from? You know, and it's a Greek word that means holos, or it is a Greek word holos, which means entire or all. And so when I use that in reference to holistic treatment approach, I simply mean I'm seeking to understand and treat the entire person, not just a single symptom, not just a single body part. You know, you are never just a leaky gut, or a person with acne, or a person with rosacea, or a person who is stressed, or insert, you know, whatever, insert anything you want. The concept of holism refers to the physical representation of the sum of your parts. So that's the structural, physiological, energetic, mental, emotional, behavioral, spiritual, consciousness, the environmental parts of you. And as simple as this approach may sound, holistic practice is actually not so simple. There is so much to consider from all angles. And in my life, I call this, and what I practice is, it's a zooming in and zooming out perspective. So you can zoom in all the way on a physiological aspect, like on the smallest, you know, molecular structure within a cell, or of a nutrient, and how that is impacting what's happening with a cell or a tissue or an organ system. Or you can zoom right out to look at the person as a whole. And having a concept of how to zoom in and how to zoom out, I think is really powerful for holistic treatment. And I just wanted to introduce that to you. And because if you think about your whole body, you know, we've got these 11 systems that science loves to talk about. When I teach, I always teach that we've got 13 body systems. We've got our microbiomes, and we also have our energy system, you know, like what's happening within our energetic state, which is linked to our emotional state. We can't live without any one of these body systems. You know, they're completely, you know, overlapping and intertwining and dynamic, working together. And the cells within the body systems are continually specializing, functioning, dying, regenerating. And within your energy systems, there's a transfer and transformation of energy happening all the time. And all of those relationships are happening both within and around you. And when I say around you, I mean that these relationships are extending to your external environment too. And this can range from, you know, beautifully symbiotic, happy, beneficial relationships to completely dysfunctional, disordered, what you would know as diseased. And so this is how I end up viewing our body as an ecosystem. And why do I teach this to people a lot. I love it. I think it's a powerful way to think, because natural ecosystems are balanced, constantly evolving systems. And this means that the interactions between the different organisms that make up the ecosystem are all contributing to this certain dynamic stability as energy continually transforms or transfers from one form to another. When I think about ecosystems also, like, consider that they occur at all scales of magnitude. So if you were to look at the smallest components of a single cell, and then to a multicellular tissue, and then all the way out to an organ system, I then consider each one of your organ systems to be its own little ecosystems that's made up of smaller ecosystems like tissues and cells that are contained within your body, which is the greater ecosystem. And then you are the largest part then of a multitude of ecosystems. But then you also live within ecosystems. Like, your family unit is an ecosystem, the environment in which you live. So your house is an ecosystem, your work, your communities, your countries, and keep zooming out. So like this planet as a whole, like we live in a global ecosystem, but then this globe lives in a galaxy. You know, we as individuals are ecosystems, and we are part of the ecosystem. And I literally could expand on this topic all day. I love the interconnectedness of human health and the impact that our choices create, not just within our own ecosystem, but the grander ecosystems that we're choosing to live in. And so what about the gut as an ecosystem? Each individual human completely influences which microbes are present within them, and also what activity can occur in all of their own distinct compartments of the gastrointestinal tract. So you are in control of your body, but only if you choose to understand it and its signals, if you choose to listen to it. And this process is all about awareness. And I'm going to unpack a lot more about the psychological aspects of that today. But what we do know is that microbiome disturbances are the hallmark of human diseases. And what I find interesting is that disturbance is a well-studied ecological phenomenon that typically produces 4 outcomes. You've got resistance to disturbance, where there is actually no change in composition or function of the ecosystem. You might get resilience, where you have communities within the ecosystem that actually respond to the disturbance, but then they go back to their normal state. And you move on to functional redundancy, where we actually have communities that end up having to change their species composition so that different species replace another, but the ecosystem is still able to retain most of its functional traits. Or then, if you progress further, there is such a great loss of composition or functional traits that the entire ecosystem state changes. The ecosystem at that point is no longer what it was before, and it has to recreate some semblance of a new ecosystem. And you can apply that to all different levels of gut disturbances and overall human systemic health. And although, you know, obviously, I hope that you can recognize, again, like this is an ecosystem that you can apply to all scales of magnitude. You can zoom all the way into your microbiome communities, but then zoom out a little bit. That's your gastrointestinal tract, or it could be one of the organs of your gastrointestinal tract, and then zoom out again, and you've got that individual person there. And our microbial ecosystem literally travels hand in hand without us throughout your entire life. It's influencing our physiological development from birth. And they actually feed us through digesting and metabolizing our own foods. They give us nutrients. They stimulate and develop both our immune and nervous systems. They're literally training our immune and nervous systems so that we can resist and respond appropriately and swiftly to harmful organisms. And then they can even impact our behavior, our sleep, our mood, by changing the concentrations of neurochemicals and or toxins in our body. And so I think these intimate interactions between human and microbial cells actually blur the lines between what is human and what is microbial. and it can challenge that simple definition of us as an individual human. And I like to challenge that concept because I think it takes us back again to being part of an ecosystem where collaboration is really important. Understanding and awareness and communication is really important. You know, we have this incredibly wide range of microorganisms residing in and all over our body. And their total weight is estimated generally to be between 2 to 3 kilos in adults. So when you hop on the scales at some point in your future, think about that. Like 2 or 3 kilos of your weight is something that you can't see and that you don't, for a lot of people, you don't know that much about. Like that's pretty massive. And from like the standpoint of just DNA and not alone, we're actually more microbial than we are human. You know, human cells, we've got about 22, just over 22,000 genes. Our microbiome contains over 2 million genes. I just think someone might be not on mute. I just want to make an awareness around that. And so I was just saying about the genes, but most of the genetic variation amongst humans is then microbial. And our microbiome can now even be used as an individual identifier. It's pretty amazing. Science has come a long way, but there's still so much to learn about our gut function, the microbes that reside within it. But what science does know so far is that our microbes influence neural, hormonal, and immune responses, permeability of both the gut and the blood-brain barrier, and that there is constant conversation occurring between our microbiome, our nervous, and our immune systems especially. But who is translating this conversation? At the center of this dialogue, I have a picture of it here on the right-hand side. Between the brain and the gut is the vagus nerve. This is what's conveying messages in both directions. It's the major neural highway connection between our gut and our brain. And it also connects many other vital organs. Look at them all on the picture. It's huge. So it's not just assisting a healthy gut and a healthy microbiome, it's assisting so much of our organ processes. Our whole ecosystem is very reliant on what's happening with our vagal nerve. And it actually represents that it is the main component of our parasympathetic nervous system, which is literally like our rest, digest, and healing mode, the complete opposite of our sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, stress response mode. And it is involved, you know, with control of our mood, our immune response, digestion, our breath, our heart rate. It changes the way our diaphragm is working in our body, and the way our diaphragm is working can actually impact really positively or negatively upon our digestive function, particularly through our stomach. There is so much that happens through our vagal nerve, and our greatest impact that we can have on the vagal nerve is actually through our long, deep breath. And I'll get into that much later in the conversation today. But basically what I was just referring to is the gut-brain axis. And, you know, like, you don't need a PhD in physiology to know that stress can be hard on the digestive system as much as it's being hard on your brain. We've all actually probably done our own experiments on the subject, whether that was intentional or not. And, you know, like, it is true. Like, remember the last time you had to get up and speak in public or do something that stretched you out of your comfort zone? Those butterflies weren't in your head, they were in your tummy. When the brain feels severely stressed, it literally unleashes a cascade of hormones that can put the whole digestive system in uproar. And so welcome to your GITs. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, and today's conversation won't be able to touch on it enough. But basically, our gastrointestinal tract is constantly exposed to a really unique and ever-changing chemical and microbiota environment. So all of our internally generated processes, so this ingestion, propulsion, secretions, digestion, absorption, elimination, they are modified by the contents that are actually found within the gastrointestinal tract in any of the compartments. And so what that means is that that's everything that we're ingesting, and that could be known, obviously the things we're choosing to put in our mouth through our diet and our liquid choices or medications. But it's also the things that we don't know that are going in, like toxins and particles and pathogens and emotions. And so it means all of these dynamic changes that are constantly occurring from our food choices and all the things that we don't know about are creating constant population shifts within our microbiome communities. And this is obviously important for skin because our microbiota within the gut is one of the main regulators in the gut-skin axis. And I'm not going to, again, unpack this today, but, you know, like there's the gut-skin axis, there's a gut-brain axis, there's a gut-liver axis, there's a gut-lung axis, there's all these different axes. But I just want to remind you that you can't separate just one system and just look at the impacts of that. Yes, it's very important, but it's still vital to look at that as part of an ecosystem, in my opinion. So what we do know is that gastrointestinal disorders are generally always accompanied by inflammatory skin manifestations, and especially acne, psoriasis, and atopic dermatitis. And it does that through its influence on the signaling pathways that can coordinate the processes that are essential to overall skin homeostasis. And as well, the gut microbiome has a definitive effect on the composition and the metabolic activity of the skin microbiome. So it does it via a few different mechanisms. And our microbiomes don't just have something to do with what's going on in our gastrointestinal tract or the skin. They have a lot to do with what's happening on the gastrointestinal tract and the skin. And so what's really interesting is that when we are stressed, every single one of the functions that is listed here on the left of the slide will change. They cannot work optimally when our stress response kicks in. It's just not possible. Our stress hormones are changing all of our digestive secretions because we're going to fight or flight mode. We're not going to rest and digest mode. And so it'll lower the secretions. It'll change the timing of passage of food through our system. So it'll either speed it right up or slow it right down. Or perhaps in some people do a combination of both on different days. Either of those, speeding up or slowing down, will have negative repercussions for your body. Stress affects both the systemic and gastrointestinal immune and inflammatory responses. It changes epithelial lining, so it could create a leaky gut situation, which then would put a lot of extra stress on the liver and a lot of extra stress on our gallbladder and the bile that we're producing. And the bile that we're producing is meant to be breaking down the fats, from the foods that we're eating that would then contribute to creating our skin barrier. Like, there's so many different layers to this. And so, you can't be getting any of the nutrients into your system, even if you were sitting down eating the most beautiful, healthy meals every single day, if there's a stress response running through your head. And that's why I really want to focus most of my conversation today on the emotional undercurrent, because your body is literally this master biofeedback system, and it's listening to every single directive that you're creating for it in your own reality. And that doesn't matter whether that's in your mind, the ecosystem of your mind, or in your physical life and the ecosystem of your physical life. I hope you're all following along with me. So our microbiomes, and thus our gastrointestinal function, is shaped by so many factors. Like, there is a lot of different things going on when you look at this list. And so it makes sense when you do look at that list and think about it, that gastrointestinal tract issues are often the compounded effects of multiple factors, not just one or two, sometimes not even three. There's many more often. And that's why a holistic approach is so vital. And so hopefully it's clear that, all these things listed here are stressful things. And so it is clear that stress affects your gut. However, stress also affects every system of your body. So long-term stress and elevated cortisol is linked to so many things, like insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, metabolic disorders, higher lipids in the blood, cardiovascular disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, abdominal weight gain, digestive complaints, leading, from mild all the way up to quite severe, all the way up to, intestinal bowel diseases, immune suppression, including autoimmune, insomnia, chronic fatigue syndrome, thyroid disorders, fertility and libido issues, dementia, depression. So many different types of inflammation can be related to chronic cortisol dysregulation, and so much chronic cortisol dysregulation can be related to what's happening in your digestive system and your microbiomes. And why I want to make a point of this is because there's undoubtedly an escalating epidemic of chronically unwell people in Australia. Here we are, we're living longer than ever before, but half of our population are living with at least one chronic condition, which obviously doesn't just affect the quality of that person's lives, but the lives of their families and their carers. And last year's stats of health basically is that nearly 2/3 of Australians aged 18 and over are overweight or obese. And that will obviously impact our microbiomes and our stress response and all sorts of things. Around half of Australians aged 16 to 85 will experience a mental illness in their life. More than 9 million Australians a day take a prescribed medication daily. And there are obviously many more taking unprescribed over-the-counter pharmaceutical medications. These people are our people, and they're carrying stress. They're part of our ecosystem. And these people are the majority of our population. And maybe it's even you that this conversation is about. And it's good to think then about and create some awareness around your ecosystems and what could be contributing to that. Stress is a big one. And what is stress? Stress is your body's reaction to any change that happens either internally or externally that requires an adjustment or a response to recalibrate back to its own equilibrium. And so we've got both endogenous or internal, exogenous, external. These can be direct or indirect. And, you know, it could be things like physical, chemical, bloodborne, immunological, acoustic, or somatic stressors. There are obviously billions of numerous environmental factors, you know, like we've got work stresses, family, socio-cultural, climate stresses, you know, what's happening in the inside environment and the outside environment, but also what's happening with our lifestyle, like what's the level of practice and the timing even of physical activity. So it's not just what you do, sometimes it's the time that you do it and the length of time or like the amount of effort involved in doing it that can change the level of stress you're placing on your body. So physical activity and sleeping, the timing of food even, whether you're drinking, taking drugs or medications. And then there's the psychological and emotional management, because the thing about any adverse threats or stresses is that they can be real or that they can be perceived. And at the end of the day, your response to stress is the same no matter what the cause. Doesn't matter whether it's in your mind or whether it's happening physically to your body. And so what you might not know, you know, I feel like I just brought a bit too much hard word for stress, but it actually, we need stress. Like it's really important. Excitement, fun, joy, positive challenges, they all create a stress hormone response. Like I get really excited when I teach. I will have more cortisol and adrenaline flowing through my body in this moment, but that's an acute stress response. It's a short-term fight or flight stress response that lasts for minutes to hours. This is nature's fundamental survival mechanism that enhances protection and performance under conditions that involve threat or challenge or opportunity. Too much stress or distress can make you feel overwhelmed because your resources, your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual resources, feel inadequate to meet the demands that you are facing. This is where things get curly, because what underlies your response to most threats? Perception. Perception acts as a lens through which we view reality. So your perception is truly your reality. And so here I am doing this presentation for you guys. This is my reality. There's many people watching right now, and you are all going to have completely different perceptions about what this training means for you in so many different planes of reality, because it's your reality. And our perceptions of personal stressors, which are so unique to our own, to ourselves, have a seriously major influence upon your mood, your sense of well-being, your behaviors, and your health. And I like to make I want to make a little example, because I think it's funny when we think about it like this. So an acute stress response. I want you all to just, you can close your eyes even if you want to do this. Close your eyes and just imagine a deer in a forest. It's eating a little bit of grass underneath a tree. There's a little bit of a cool breeze, a little bit of sunshine. And boom, a wolf comes. It chases that deer, and the deer survives. It gets chased for a couple of minutes. The deer makes a miraculous escape, and that deer will, after a little bit of a moment, stop breathing so fast, will calm down, will go back to its flock. It'll then eventually, in a little while, not too long after, it'll actually erase the memory of what happened with that wolf. The day, the time, the tree that it was eating under, what the grass tasted like at the time, you know, what did it smell like in the air, who had it seen or spoken to just before, like, was it really fit when it was running from the wolf? Did it look good while it was running away from the wolf? Did it take a selfie? You know, did anyone else happen to support its escape, or did everyone else just leave it to its own devices? To the deer, the threat happened, the threat went away, life went on. A predator attack is literally time limited. In contrast, our human mind goes on and on and on and on, either ruminating and repeating the trauma or perceived traumas as long as we allow it to, or even future projecting, like imagining different scenarios where that might happen again. All the stress hormone axis, or the HPA axis, knows at that time that you were thinking those thoughts is that it needs to release stress hormones because we are perceiving a threat in our environment. And so if we are perceiving our environment as threatening all or most of the time, doesn't matter whether it's through memories, it doesn't matter whether it's future projecting, then our HPA or stress axis will release the matching every single time. And so as part of our inbuilt survival mechanisms, we're filtering our experiences through everything we've learned thus far. And this is why our brains are a record of the past. They are making comparisons and judgments every time. For instance, like in the deer's case, we go past a similar tree or smell the same smell, or we're hanging out with the same people, or insert whatever. Like those memories are flowing back through our head every day. And considering we have 70,000, up to 70,000 thoughts a day moving through our mind, I think it makes it worth deeply considering that it is attachment to unchallenged patterns of thinking that is the universal cause of great suffering. And perhaps some of you are wondering, so what are filters? And I want to unpack this more for you today, well, as much as I can in a short session, because my belief, this is why I'm excited to share this education. Every time I offer education, I will find a way to weave this in, because I think this is a completely underrepresented part of any education, to do with anatomy, to do with physiology, to do with human health. Emotions and beliefs are part of our well-being ecosystem. And no one ever really talks about why we think what we think and why our body responds the way that it does. And it's these subconscious stress responses that are literally shifting our health experience. And so filters, basically, I want to talk about these a little bit more. From pre-birth onwards, you've received both positive and negative messages from all of your surroundings, all the time. All of these messages programmed into your subconscious, and then they combine to create your personal and very unique filtered belief system. So we're all filtering based upon our prior life experiences, emotional experiences, knowledge base, our environment, our beliefs, our culture, our cognitive distortions, our genetic predispositions, our physical state, our sexuality, our level of self-interest, our level of introspection, and also our current emotional state. All of these are like filters, and it's a little bit like Instagram. You can just chop and change your filter with every thought that runs through your mind. It depends on your previous memory bank. So this processing, interpreting, selecting, and organizing of information is your preset. It's your organized filter or perception system through which you are not only surviving this incredible amount of sensory information that's coming at you nonstop, but through which you also are continuously creating your reality. And so we've got these filters because our senses are gathering some like 11 million bits of data per second from the environment. That is such a huge amount. And that's why we need these filters to process it. And then that's why our brain has connected this to a neural pathway that runs the processed information through. So neural pathways in your brain are kind of like a mental shortcut that speed up your sensory processing. And I can just make a really quick example of this for everyone actually. So whoever's wearing pants or undies today, which leg went in first? Did you think about it? And also, you know, for anyone that went commando, good on you, but I'm sure that you can think of another time that you put on a pair of pants and you wouldn't have thought about it. It's just something that your brain has a neural pathway for. It's just part of your memory bank. And so your perceptions of your life and the matching filters to it are a habit for your mind. And it actually makes you the person you think you believe you are. And these beliefs dictate how your body responds to its environment, whether it engages in a stress response or not. And of course, the biggest disadvantage of this inbuilt process, even though it's amazing for our survival mechanism, it's sometimes not so great for thriving, because once our filters have formed, they don't change unless we ask them to, because we're paying more attention to the information that fits our filters and we pay much less attention to information that contradicts them. And so sometimes our filters are actually so entrenched that they continually distort how we see and behave in the world, and then we behave in the world in ways that are not helpful for us to move forwards. We literally can get stuck in different realities or not supportive realities because our neural pathways are literally trained that way. And, you know, before I just mentioned that we have up to 70,000 thoughts a day, but the next thing to know here is that up to 95% of what we think, feel, and do is recycled from our past. And so in my life, I'm interested to observe myself. I'm interested to observe, am I reacting from my past? Am I conscious or unconscious? Or am I responding to life by creating with my awareness? And it is very true that if you are looking to confirm your beliefs, your brain will unconsciously find ways to confirm your belief patterns by drawing your attention to examples of proof. And that's why it's important to be aware. And I want to just give you a really quick example of how we can have an, really easy tendency to focus on one detail, and we often can take it out of context. And we can also ignore other more important parts of an experience because of our own filters. And I hope that it'll be clear that when I do give this example that, you could extrapolate this across populations and with a million different storylines. And so I've picked Janaea. She delivered some extra skin treatment training for her workplace team of 5. She got a round of applause at the end, as well as her colleagues. They told her how well she did and how helpful they found her presentation. But she's a great boss. She always gives these anonymous feedback sheets so she can find out if there's some ways that she can improve. And when she looked at the anonymous feedback forms, she got triggered. She noticed one form with critical comments and a poorer rating. This trigger created a response formed by her filters, and she just couldn't stop thinking about this one piece of negative feedback. And she was criticizing herself, saying things like, oh my God, I'm so rubbish. I'm a rubbish boss. She ruminated and she went back over and over and over this memory many times. As a result, she felt awful. She felt unworthy. She felt she hadn't done enough. She felt unlikable. She felt she had failed. Janaea's thinking process was distorted because she had managed to ignore all the other positive feedback she had beautifully received, and she focused solely on the negative. She did this automatically and without realizing she had done it. Her body created and maintained a stress response hormone that each negative thought come running and recycling through our head. Our brain truly gets into a survival habit of only looking for the bad, if that's what we let it do. And so it does that because it's looking for the dangers and the threats to our being. And that's what can cause us to ignore or filter out the good things, the positive things. And so in saying that, and even with this example, I just want to reassure you that cognitive distortions are really common. They're entirely normal and they're just not our fault. The power in this is that each thought we have moves through our belief system before an action or a behavior is formed. And so it makes sense then that all we need to do is get conscious of our filters or our beliefs, and how we do that is by getting aware of our triggers. And so what my belief is as a holistic practitioner is that understanding and healing your own negative core beliefs is what creates a reduction in stress and healing for your body, not just for your body, with all of your relationships, including your relationship to work. And just before I move to the next slide, I just want to ask you, if you cannot identify your own emotions, if you can't name them or also feel where they sit in your body, how are you supposed to understand them or process and integrate them for yourself or communicate about them with others? And so if you can't find that spaciousness and compassion to do that for yourself, how can you fully and reasonably expect anyone around you to give that to you? Because underneath that is the deep instinctual knowing that if you can't do that for yourself, then you will never be able to fully receive it from another. And these are problems that everyone struggles with. And this is why I believe that Australia have a chronically unwell population. It's definitely part of this cycle. But the best news is, and why I share this sort of education, is that you can retrain your filters, your perceptions and your beliefs to shift your emotions and give different areas of your brain cerebral maturation simply through awareness. And so let's get aware of how core filters, beliefs and triggers are formed. And to do this, I've got to wind it right back. So I want to talk about attachment, attunement, and emotional communication. These are things that start at birth. As soon as you're born, emotional communication begins with usually a mother, but with all primary caregivers. And so, yeah, how a parent responds to their baby determines what emotions that baby will experience. And so the way these interactions play out greatly influences how an infant will behave towards others as they grow into childhood and adulthood. And so most of this communication is nonverbal. And I'd like to point out that even as adults, we are communicating primarily without words. The deepest levels of our brain are always evaluating energy, facial expressions, gaze and body posture and body actions before we evaluate tone of voice and choice of words. And so basically the two key components of human bonding are attachment and attunement. So attachment is the emotional bond between parents and children, and that is a whole nother seminar topic. That's a big one. But attunement is the way that they tune into a child's needs. Like, how does that parent or caregiver work to understand the child's thoughts and respond to how they are feeling and behaving in a consistent and loving way? So the essence of attunement is this: I see you, I hear you, I understand you, and I am consistent with these offerings. And so, you know, if you're watching this, if you've been lucky enough to truly deeply feel attunement throughout your childhood, then hopefully you are aware of the blessing of this knowing, because it's huge. So both attachment and attunement are vital to the way a child views the world, feels safe, forms relationships, as well as their filters and beliefs, and then how all of this transfers to their adult life. And research unequivocally shows that a large percentage of children face varying levels of instability at different times in their lives. And so it could be related to financial instability, family instability, or other caregiving, to traumas, to residential, educational, dietary, and attunement instability. Any or all of these are going to have deep and lasting impacts on children's development in their brain, as well as physically and emotionally. And although, you know, it's pretty likely that many of us watching this or listening to this grew up in a family with some sort of mental illness or addiction or family system dysfunction or some other problems, I still often in my clinic, and you know, whether that's as a skin therapist or as a naturopath or an educator, I often talk to people who will willingly say they had a good childhood. You know, there was always food on my table and there was a roof over my head. My parents were lovely. But what I'm interested in, why do those people still feel stuck so much of the time? Why do they feel unsatisfied in relationships? Or why is their professional life not going where they want it to in spite lots of effort? Why is their body still stressed? Why do they never feel seen or heard? Or why do they feel scared of expressing themselves? What if during your early years, they experience lots of unconscious misattunement? It is entirely possible for a parent who loves and wants the best for their child to emotionally neglect their needs very unwittingly, very unconsciously, because this is subtle, this is a bit more nuanced, it's a bit harder to pinpoint, and thus it's a lot harder to recognize and then to understand. But basically, in a nutshell, emotional neglect is when a parent fails to see, know, feel, hear, or understand their child as they really are, their true soul essence, an expression of that essence, rather than through the lens of what that parent thinks they are or wants them to be. And so it could come in the form of a, you know, lack of consistent attention and care from a really busy or distracted parent, or perhaps there was a lack of boundaries or rules or structure. Maybe the parents were super demanding or blaming, difficult to please, maybe even vindictive. Maybe the parents allowed dysfunctional sibling rivalries. Maybe there was a lack of encouragement and a celebration of wins. Maybe there was even subtle put downs or a failure to provide the lessons and tools needed to navigate the world. Maybe it was an authoritarian or over-controlling parent that really focused on rules and restrictions and who raised their children with little flexibility and often unusually high demands. And so a lot of that is shame-based discipline, and it's a big one, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But emotional neglect, what I want to point out to everyone, can be present even when the parent is providing for all of the child's physical needs, and it can be present in otherwise loving, caring, and well-meaning parents. It's not the same as emotional abuse, hence it's not often apparent as abuse, and as its ability to camouflage in normalcy is often the issue. The misattunement is more about what we didn't get rather than the more dramatic and visually intact memories of what we did get in our childhood, good or bad. And so these are the more common adult symptoms, I guess, of emotional neglect. And so often people feel a little bit like they're on the outside looking in. Sometimes people could even say that you're hard to really connect to because you find it hard to get really vulnerable. And a lot of times there can be a bit of difficulty accurately and objectively noticing both your strengths and your weaknesses. And so if you are reading this list and you've answered yes to more than a few, it is potential, and this is not diagnostic, but it is potential that perhaps you had some childhood emotional neglect level that hasn't been healed. And this can be, again, taken through to our global environment. Like, this is not unusual. Like, this is really common. And I'm not here to make anybody here feel judgmental or blaming or any parent in the room to feel guilty. This is literally just a conversation about awareness of patterns of beliefs and filters that have been picked up. And these can be trans or intergenerational. And there are so many reasons why a parent might be emotionally neglectful, you know, ranging from simply not having a better model in their own childhood to not having enough emotional resources. Maybe they're overworked or otherwise overloaded. Maybe they're struggling with their own depression or their own grief or a variety of other scenarios. What I know is that most parents did and do their best with all the resources they have available to them. And this conversation is simply about objectively viewing your first modeling around love and acceptance and how those patterns you've learned may be repeating in your life. Because here is the catch. How can you see yourself clearly if your parents didn't and never taught you how? And this isn't just a conversation about me or you. This can be for clients. Like this is undercurrent stress responses, because children are so receptive. You know, we pick up these things when we're little because our right brains are active and our left brains, which includes critical thinking, are not fully functional. And, you know, I don't know if you know this, but about 60% of all the energy a baby expends when they're growing is in the brain. It's huge. Birth to 5 is the most rapid brain development of any time in our lives. And so it's obviously during these formative years that subconscious mind programming naturally occurs, to nobody's fault. And so this programming is how from a young age we can stop expressing our needs. Like we learn to unconsciously reject them, we learn to unconsciously shut them down and then disconnect from them, because misattunement often leads to shame. And it's this kind of feeling of shame that makes the child feel wrong for feeling, wanting or needing or expressing something. And, you know, when I'm thinking about examples for this, like there's so many ways we could go about it, but the one I created for this particular talk was just think about what a short hop it is from a comment like, that was so stupid, to you're so stupid. So somehow the belief moves from criticisms of actions to criticisms of person. Criticisms overall, I'm pretty sure if any of you guys have been criticized, you would understand that they're pretty easy to internalize. So a you're so stupid becomes I'm so stupid pretty quickly. And this is, you know, part of where we learn shame. And, you know, we were shamed for not getting it right, not working hard enough, not being clean and tidy enough, not doing well enough in school, or indeed could be doing too well, in which maybe you were accused of getting ahead of yourself. Maybe you were causing a sibling to feel insecure, or maybe your parent was getting insecure. You may have been warned to not let it all go to your head if you succeeded. Maybe you were chastised when you failed. You could have been shamed for eating too much or not enough, being too skinny, too fat, too shy, too boisterous, for making a mistake, for crying, or for being too emotional, too sensitive, maybe too happy or too optimistic, you know, too out there. Perhaps religious teachings created some feelings of guilt and shame. You know, there was parents, teachers, relatives, society in general, when we didn't conform to all of their rules, their beliefs, their filters, regardless of, like what situation that was in, that potentially didn't align with our true soul values and our true authentic expression of self. And so we learnt shame around ourselves. And at that point, we take on limiting beliefs or filters that sabotage our success. And just because we took on these kind of words of truth, like that's how our brain took them up. And so some really common limiting beliefs installed in childhood: I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable, I'm flawed, my feelings not valid, I have to take care of everyone around me, or why can't I just be normal like the others? Limiting beliefs are exactly what they sound like. So my definition for it is beliefs that limit what you believe is possible for yourself and also what you will allow in your life. There are so many amazing things that want to show up in all of our lives, but if we have self-limiting beliefs, those things struggle to show up because we won't let them in for, a variety of reasons. And we can stop taking action to be our most authentic and powerful self. Or maybe we don't tailor our actions to the actual demands of a situation. Instead, we can get triggered. We fall back on old ways of responding that are emotionally laden, that create a stress hormone response. And generally, they're really counterproductive for all of our different body systems. So for our ecosystem, our individual little organ ecosystems within our whole ecosystem, but then the grander scale of ecosystem, because when we just keep going with these behaviors and responses, when we're modifying the truth of who we are, we continue to do the same thing over and over, we're going to burn out. We're going to get tired. We're going to get exhausted because we're remaining imprisoned by our pasts. And, anytime you become triggered, it'll be you becoming self-conscious in a way that makes you feel bad or embarrassed or guilty, or you feel shamed or humiliated or exposed, or, like you're making up your own version of that. Like a lot of this is just perceived in your head. Like this is your own memories that are creating these stories. These relate back to your childhood beliefs. And these are shame emotions that can't heal unless we choose to heal it. So shame erodes one's sense of self. It will drive a chronic stress response in a person because there's an absence of self-empathy, self-compassion, self-reassurance, or healthy self-soothing. There's an absence of self-nurture and spaciousness to acknowledge, express, and integrate our feelings through all of life's ups and downs. And I really think of shame as developmental trauma. Usually it's definitely not a single shock to the system. Sometimes that happens in some lives, but often it's slow drip, drip, drip. It ends up disrupting normal functioning and creates a feeling of isolation and powerlessness because shame is a binding emotion. It latches on and interferes with the free flow of other emotions. And so often, with shame, we'll hold on to anger and fear and grief, and we repress it and suppress it and distort it in our body. And so this is why I wanted to provide clarity around this, because bringing these concepts to your attention just creates some awareness, in your own ecosystem and the tribe that you're looking after, because I know that unconscious shame causes us to have a conflicted and stressful relationship with ourselves. That obviously leads to undercurrent difficulties and stress in our body, but also in our relationship with anything else in our life. So, insert partner, colleagues, parents, siblings, teachers, friends, relatives, children, but also in our business. Because, we actually end up building a life of distractions to run away from our real feelings, and we continuously search for new distractions. Sometimes we're continuously searching for the new quick fix until we can't keep up anymore and we're exhausted. And so this is all part of this stress response that's impacting all of your body systems. And all of this will eventually reach the skin, or it might flare up and flare down in the skin. So as a skin therapist, first and foremost, that's been a long time career of mine, like 25 years this year. But also obviously as a naturopath, but then understanding much more about the human psychology that's driving the stress response. It's this awareness that we can create, like getting conscious of some of these things, that starts shifting our control back so we can take control of our thoughts and therefore our body. And I hope you're all here with me in this conversation. Thanks for listening. So as we become more conscious, we become more and more aware of our own thought patterns. And these are just the core patterns that we installed in childhood through no fault of our own. And so then it creates awareness around the parts of ourselves that we might be repressing or denying or distorting, so that we do feel a sense of belonging and acceptance in our tribe, in our unit. And so I just want to remind everyone, you are not your thoughts. You are the person experiencing them. And they are simply a preset neural pathway your brain developed as you were learning these core beliefs. And it's these beliefs that are driving your current behaviors. And so in order to create new responses and new habits or new neural pathways, we just have to practice self-witnessing, observing what we think, how we speak, and how we react. I know that freedom truly comes from not believing everything I think. Don't believe everything you think. That's where freedom comes in. Be an observer of everything that you're thinking. And ultimately, I believe that developing self-compassion is when we can get really curious about what happened without being judgmental, without being blaming or shaming, just getting curious and exploring why it happened. What's the impact of it having happened? And then it's about learning from this exploration. Without compassion, we tend to ruminate and obsess on our other people's perceived mistakes. And if that happens, I think in a way you end up being hunted by those ruminations, yeah? So compassion allows us to understand why we behaved the way we did or other people did, and what we can do in the future in order to expand and evolve. It's equal parts love, acceptance, accountability, and forgiveness. And so the word emotion, I don't know if you know this, it actually means energy in motion when you translate it from Latin. So emotion is the experience of energy moving through the body, and these energy currents can increase or decrease cell activities in our ecosystem. So our body is like this amazing biofeedback system. It's constantly giving us a reliable stream of information in the form of sensations. If we can access its wisdom, then we are very powerful. And so if you think about the fact that we live in a world that is constantly thinking, we're up in our mind and we're doing, we're so busy, we are so much less likely to be able to even begin to tap into our feeling senses when we're in our human being mode, when we're being present. Because this is partly because of our conditioning and habits. I myself have done a huge amount of work on this. So understanding the subtle signals we receive from our bodily sensations can access this powerful reservoir of knowledge. This is healing. And so, you know, the previous slide that I have up, like if you view negative emotions as something you shouldn't have to experience, you're going to naturally resist them. But this won't work out overall, because it is absolutely, undeniably, and 100% necessary to fully understand and accept your own resistance to triggers and challenges. And potentially with a lot of assistance. In my personal life, I've had a lot of assistance. I've contacted numerous healers, and this has been a long time journey for me. I had to work through the hurt I experienced in the past. And everyone does to their own degree, to deal with what previously maybe you thought were your gremlins, but they truly are literally just your opportunity. They are an opportunity, all of these triggers, the truth, for empowerment, to allow more self-love in, more self-acceptance in, more authentic expression in, and you learn to move away from the drama into potential, into creation, into opportunity. And I absolutely know it can be the greatest challenge. I have been doing this a long time, but I, you know, you probably heard the saying, magic happens outside the comfort zone. The same is actually true about emotions. It's not just about doing in that statement, it's about being. The magic happens outside the comfort zone. People have the tendency to avoid discomforting feelings, but it's definitely not the long-term solution. And it's not long-term health. It's not long-term wellness. And so I've just got this slide here because Tara Brach is an expert in this field, and she's amazing to listen to. And she suggests basically slowness, patience, stillness, watchfulness, awareness, kindness and compassion being the key elements, because you have a choice in how you interpret and respond to the emotional turbulence that comes up for you. Recognizing this is taking responsibility for your feelings and your actions and the physiological, the physiochemical response that's happening in your body. Because with all of this, we've got this gut. We've got our gut within us that's playing a really important function in our internal body sensing and intuition, with this ENS, with this second brain. And, you know, like that expression, trust your gut. You know, it really speaks to the subtle signs and signals we're getting from our gut to help guide us, or even to avert danger. Like, how many times have you regretted not listening to your gut feeling? I've definitely been annoyed at myself numerous times. It really is like an internal compass that supports us with intuitive decision making while also engaging the mind, and we get to connect to it through our breath. And so a healthy gut and a digestive system can affect our energy levels, the energy of our body, because of the emotions of our body, our motivation, our clarity of thought, our intuitive decision making. So a brain or mind that has adequate stimulation, nutrients and rest can support improved gut and skin functioning. When our gut and our mind and our skin are healthy, we can literally take on the whole world. And I do want to talk about our breath just before we move into finishing today. So this is one of my favorite things to talk about, because it's a deep diaphragmatic breath that activates your vagal nerve. And our vagal nerve, being one of the first slides that I showed you today, it literally has communication with pretty much every single one of your vital organs. It has a phenomenal impact upon your body, and it has about 75% to do with your parasympathetic nervous system. And so a really deep, long breath, and it really is a deep breath, and obviously we can't breathe into our belly, but I call it deep belly breathing. You need to expand all the way into the deepest recesses of your lungs to allow your breath to move fully into your body, and for your diaphragm to really expand and then to really contract. It is that expansion and then that contraction of your diaphragm that's basically massaging the vagal nerve and signaling it. And if you think about all the different body processes that go into place with the fight or flight, like you are on the run, your muscles get tight, your heart's beating fast, so your breath is moving fast, you breathe higher and shallow up. 90% of our population breathe that way just naturally. They catch themselves in their own stress response, because your body also listens to the biofeedback of the way that you continue to breathe. And one of the things I know with doing lots and lots of breath work with my clients and with my tribe is that it can be challenging sometimes for people to even learn how to take a deep, long breath. our diaphragm is thin connective muscle tissue, and it can get unfit just like any muscle in our body. And so learning how to expand it and then contract it can take some conscious awareness and practice. And I've been practicing breath work for over 10 years in my life now, and it's still a practice for me. It's a game every day of bringing myself back to my presence and my breath and my awareness. But really, I wanted to bring this to your attention is because deep diaphragmatic breath basically expands consciousness in my interpretation of what that means. Like, it expands your presence and your awareness, and it enables individuals to monitor what is going on with their body, with their sensations of their body, to be aware of the nature and the quality of events as they occur, and to perceive their meaning because they have more clarity. They're in their body, not in their mind. If you have ever done a breath practice, or even just taken a moment to track your whole breath in as it moves through your nostrils, down the back of your throat, and spreads down into your lungs, if you were to continue tracking your breath for a moment, you are embodied in that moment. You're not running around in your mind in the future or in the past. You're embodied. You're connected to your body, and you start a conversation with your body that's very powerful. And so obviously you're activating this vagal nerve response that's calming, that will allow you to have that clarity to perceive the meaning of what's happening in that present moment. And at the same time, imagine if you were eating. It's going to support your digestive system. And if you think about how many people eat on the run, they eat while they're in front of things. Maybe you are eating while you're listening to me right now. In that moment, unless you've had practice with it, you're not going to be breathing long and deep in your body. You won't notice it. You'll be in a slight stress response that won't optimize the way those nutrients are moving into your body, and therefore how those nutrients can potentially be moving up to your skin. And so I just want to take you through a really quick breath exercise, if you're all okay with that. And so when I do this, I just invite people to, hopefully you're sitting on a chair. And if you're standing up, that's so fine, but just have your feet really nice and flat on the ground. And at first, I would love you if you could close your eyes and make this like a really inner experience. It's got nothing to do with anything else right now. This is just you and your breath. And I'm just going to guide you through a quick connection practice. And so just closing your eyes, and I love to put my hands on my heart. So you might like to do the same. I have my right hand on my heart and my left hand over the top of my right. And I love to squash my hands in on my heart and just feel that.
This is hot, so just wait a minute.
Oh, yep, muted. Thank you. So you might want to just put your hands, both of them, on your heart and just feel that connection of just that first. This is just you, just nurturing yourself with your touch. And now just start inviting your breath more deeply into your body. And at the same time, you might just want to sit up out of your hips. So you've got this beautiful length through your spine, a slight tuck of your chin. And then it's almost like someone's pulling you from the crown of your head. So you're just beautifully elongated. And now just drop your shoulders. You might want to open and close your mouth and just release tension through your jaw as well. And I can't hear you if you're all muted, please. But you might also just want to inhale deeply and then exhale with a sigh. And then inhaling now, and then just exhaling wherever you are in your breath cycle. I'm going to take you through a counted rhythm of inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. And just keep your eyes closed and this beautiful, long, deep breath rolling. We only did like 3 rounds of that. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And when you come back into this space, just notice, like, did that very short practice, did that make a difference to you? Do you feel a little bit more softness or spaciousness within your body, or actually like in the room that you're in? Most people notice that is what happens. And there is so many different types of breath practices, but the main aim with deep diaphragmatic breath is to exhale with a longer count rhythm than your inhale, because you really need to control your diaphragm to be able to do that. And so the more you practice, the deeper and longer you can flow your breath. And that's why breath is always a practice. And it's also really valuable for people who feel like they can't, meditate, for want of a better word. If they're not into meditation, just counting your breath rhythm, in my opinion, is a form of meditation. It's a form of presence and stillness awareness. And so I want to kind of bring this back to, instead of focusing solely on a single biological system, such as just your skin or your gut, I think it's really important to look at the whole ecosystem. The whole ecosystem of a person, obviously the environment, the lifestyle, the physical body, the consciousness through introspection and presence and awareness. What are the self-connection and spiritual practices? What are the habits, the neural habits and the behavior habits of that person? Let alone their nutrition, but also what's about their support networks, and how do they all integrate for that person? Like, all of these things are so important. These are all the sum of the parts. And so why do I present all of this? Because I think it's so powerful, so empowering for you and your tribe, for you to be aware of this, because you need to fully believe and recognize and acknowledge and honor every single part of you before you can share that with all. You can do it while you're on a journey. You can be 1 or 2 steps ahead of your tribe. I mean, that's what being a leader is all about most of the time. But this is what you have the power to share with your tribe. And from this point, you can have such powerful positive ripple effects through your tribe and through the whole world. Like, we are a global collective. You are intimately connected, not just with every single part of you, but with every single part of our ecosystems. And so you've got the physical part of you and the energy part of you. And so if the actual energy of emotions is out of whack within you, your health state will suffer to some degree, but so will just the ripple effects that are happening through our ecosystem. And as the treating practitioner, I think it's our job to stimulate our own innate healing energies. I really do. And so I just want to thank you guys so much for listening and running a little bit over time with me. If you want to get in touch, become part of my tribe, these are all the ways that you do it. I'm going to come back. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back on camera now, just to ask if there's any questions that have come up. Yeah, I hope that journey served you guys. Like, it really is it was a pretty fast but very deep dive into some of the things that are driving the undercurrent stress response, not just within you, but for the people that you're looking after. And without awareness around that, how can you help with that?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Pia. In many times through your presentation, what you were saying would send me off on a thought and an idea, and I'd go wandering and then come back. Because
honestly,
it's like
these sort of presentations are really multi-layered. Like, I mean, anytime you listen to any education, you can only uptake what you can at that particular time. And then your knowledge base, your foundational base gets bigger. And then next time you can integrate more and you can uptake more. So I would definitely, if this resonated with anyone watching, I would recommend you watch it a few times. You'll hear different things. You'll have different aha moments. Like, you will progress with your knowledge. But what I'm looking to encourage is, if something has resonated, follow that excitement, follow that joy, because that's how you serve your tribe to your highest. You are the most powerful person here for your tribe. And so, I can be a facilitator of some of that knowledge, but then it's up to you to flow with what feels great.
For sure. I was thinking, one of the thoughts that I had when you were talking, and I think it was when you were talking about the neurological pathways that we create through our life, and so our thoughts sort of go back to something that we're used to thinking without even thinking about it, if that makes any sense. And I was thinking that's exactly how social media or AI work. They see, like, for example, I love tennis. If I'll look at a video on tennis, and then without even asking to look to search, it's there. There are videos presenting themselves, or or things that I normally think about will come up. And it's a bit like that, isn't it, that our brain works, a bit like our
I could talk about this all day. The layers of unseen and unconscious control that are placed upon our society to keep us repeating the same patterns of the past are huge. They're so huge. And I mean, this is probably the platform to start getting involved with that and expressing more about it. But it is really important to be aware that all of the controlling bodies in our life would like to keep us in a box where we're not in control of our own health or our thoughts. They like it when we don't think. They like it when we're unconscious. We're highly malleable. We are sheeplings in that position. And so when you are empowered enough to understand that and also not, I mean, without let go of the blame or the judgment, all of a sudden you go, whoa, I am the creator of my own reality. What do I want to create today? Who do I want to be? What choices am I making? Every single yes, no decision you ever make in your life creates the trajectory of your life. And so you have to be really in alignment with your gut feeling, your heart feeling, to work out what's actually serving you and your body and your mind at the highest. And to be in a position of doing that, I mean, I definitely want to acknowledge my healing journey around that has been massive. Not everyone needs to go on such a huge journey, but you have to be aware of what needs healing, like what inside of you needs the nurture and the love and that place for acknowledgement and acceptance so that you can integrate it within you so that you can start thinking differently. Usually until we've healed those parts of ourselves, we're stuck in that looping paradigm. Like we get to the edge of the healing, we go, oh, that's too hard, I'll put it back over there, and then we keep looping in and around. And so, you know, we have to break open the things that need healing. You kind of have to run towards all your fears to get to the point where you can expand and hold more love and more awareness and more consciousness.
Thank you for explaining that. I don't want to take, I don't want to hog all the questions, but one last thing, I really enjoyed hearing how everything is connected to the ecosystem of our gut, our skin, our body, and then you expand it out, you zoomed out, and you said, well, our family is our own little ecosystem, our house, our suburb and country, and then the planet. And it made me think of this beautiful documentary I watched yesterday, and that I hope everybody can take the time to watch, with David Attenborough, his witness statement, his last film where he talks about the ecosystem and biodiversity.
I would love it.
You're going to love it. You have to watch it. And it's how everything, even on the planet, and you went and you scooped out even to our galaxy, but everything is connected, and understanding those relationships are vital.
These short sessions, like I expand on a lot of these topics in my longer seminars and courses and things, because we are energy. We're superimposed dynamic energy fields, but we think we're so physical. Like we're caught in this entrapment of thinking of how physical our lives are, but we are actually underneath it all, we're an energy being. That's who we are. And so once that understanding is there, it can allow you to potentially accept or integrate or be aware of that concept that you're not a human being having a spiritual experience. You're literally like a galactic spiritual being having a human experience. Like the energy connections, even if you look at it from an atomic elemental level, we are connected to Stardust. We are connected to other galaxies.
Yes,
like
so true.
It blows your mind when you start looking at it. Like I research this sort of stuff all the time. I'm always looking for links, and I love explaining it. I just find it so fascinating and amazing. We're so lucky to be alive.
Definitely. So Lydia, I might ask you to look through. I noticed there may be some questions. If you can. If there are any questions, or just
thank you comments.
Okay, so they're just thank you comments. Shelley or anybody, Jemima, Danielle, anyone who is with us still, if you have a question, you have to unmute yourself.
I haven't seen Shelley for so long. Hi, Shelley. Hi, I haven't seen you forever.
Is there anybody?
Well, if no one,
that's fine. I mean, there's a lot for us to process, I think.
Great question.
Okay, there's one
got
question.
A great question.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an awesome question.
From
Lucy,
Lucy.
so
Oh, okay.
my answer to that would be that you need to discover what these concepts mean to you first before you start sharing that information. So what I'm doing in this capacity is sharing to people who are educating their tribe. So, you know, like you are the leader. And so to be the leader, your depth of integration and understanding is always paramount to what you get to express, whether that's on a skincare level or a treatment level or like an emotional concept level. And so I would suggest you do heaps more further reading. There is so many free resources available on YouTube. I mean, I spend my whole life learning. I'm so obsessed with it. So there's so many podcasts to do with like looking at emotional trauma or healing or attachment theories, attunement theories. So some of the concepts that I brought up in today's presentation, you would be able to do your own further knowledge on that. I mean, Tara Brach, some of her free resources on YouTube, she talks about anxiety and other underlying issues for quite a long time. There's presenters like Teal Swan, who breaks down psychological components in like kind of short snippets, like 20 minutes of information. Who else? Oh God, I listen to so many people. I can't think of anyone else right now, but
I really like Dr. Libby too.
Amazing.
I heard her speak about 2 years ago, and it actually made just an absolute change and shift in my life. She's really good to listen to. Presents in a fashion that's really good to understand. I took my whole team to see her speak one time, and we all came out of it. It's like you were talking at the beginning of your talk, Pia, with a different perception of what to take home, even though we all sat and listened to the same talk, but it resonated in different ways with the team. And for me, the big change I made after that, I became a daily meditator after I heard her speak 2 years ago. So yeah, big impact. You don't have to change everything, just change one thing.
Yeah, and also, I mean, Lucy, I mean, I guess too, I don't know if you meditate or do breath work already, but imagine if you could just start talking about that. Like, imagine if the way to start off that conversation was, how about we just create some more awareness around body sensations? You know, most people don't even know what their body feels like. They're so up here to actually come into their body. A lot of people find that threatening and challenging because it's so different to normal. So even just starting off opening that conversation. So in my, I mean, I've been doing these sort of things for quite a long time. I was just trying to think of how I started blending things in when I first, like, we're really spiritual at my practice now. Like, it's at a, like, we're high science, high spirituality. Like, that's what I do. And so I think that when I first started, I actually, because I'm so scientific, and a lot of my clients come to see me because I'm so scientific. Like, I literally read scientific journal papers for fun. Like, I'm a fucking nerd. And so anyway, when I first started talking about it, I would talk about the vagal nerve, the effects of the vagal nerve, what deep diaphragmatic breathing was, the fact that we have to get their diaphragm used to breathing long and deep. And then once we had started initiating that practice, then we got into the feelings and then sensations, and that understanding of calm and clarity and openness that comes when you are breathing properly into your body. And so from that point, because, you know, if you're a couple of steps ahead of your tribe, you will have discovered and found more, and that will be your next offering, because the direction that you take with it will be unique unto you. And I always celebrate people taking on this information and doing whatever it resonates the most with them and kind of going on your own discovery journey. But it might help with a lot of people who aren't conscious or aware to start with the vagal nerve, start with the science, start with deep diaphragmatic breath. There's actually got a lot of scientific journal papers written on it. You know, it reduces inflammatory markers, it increases heart rate variability, it does so many amazing things. And so you could just present initially like that and say, I'm actually going to make this a really big focus at my clinic, and these are the reasons why. And then every time a client comes in for a session, you might say to them to start off their skin treatment, I'm actually just going to take you through, you might do a cycle of 10 breaths of what I just showed you guys, like 5 breaths in, like 5 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Do 10 of them. You start off your treatment like that to reduce their inflammatory markers, to make their skin more receptive to the treatment. Amazing way to start. And then in a month's time, you actually start doing longer. You might do like specific meditations or you know, hope that helped.
That's fascinating. Yeah. And I think that clients who start their beauty treatment by doing that sort of breathing, it'll be you know, for the first time, something that they'll remember, and I'm sure that that's a way that they'll say, my beauty therapist, she makes me breathe, and I feel so much more calm. I don't know, it's just great, and you know, it's just another.
I cannot even begin to tell you how many clients are doing things, you know, a few years down the track with me that they were like, I'm never going to meditate, I'm never going to go to yoga, I'm never, and now they're like, I would like more. So we're all evolving all the time. We just need the opportunity, you know, who you surround yourself with. Like, the tribe that you pick is really important for your learning, and people come to see you for their specific resonance. There's something that you have, there's some medicine that you have cracked open to in your own heart that you can then share with your tribe. And so that's why it's always your own unique journey to find your unique medicine for your unique tribe. There are no comparisons. You know, we're a collective. So anyway, I'm sorry, I've got to wrap it up, you guys. I've actually got another.
Thank you so much. Thank you a million times. We will have this recording. We'll be posting that recording on our closed group, and we'll share with everybody who enrolled. It was fascinating. I hope that you'll join us again in the future. Really thoroughly enjoyed every word, and thank you for taking us in a journey of thoughts, and you know,
once you start, hopefully you can't stop. That's what I like to do. I hope that inspiration just sowed some deep seeds in you.
Sure. And if you have any questions that come up, we'll send them to you. Thank you very much. You take care, and we'll see you again.
Bye, everyone. Thanks
you
for listening.
Bye-bye.